our live.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining our live stream. I meant to do this live stream actually on Wednesday, and sorry, I had to close it at last minute. I feel like this week there have been more emergencies than any other week. There's a lot of updates coming out from the government, a lot of adjustments that we have to make. I will say not too much on EB-1A, so I know most of you joined this for EB-1A discussion. Don't worry when I say that. It's mostly involving other things. But I did want to take some time to talk about what you can pay for EB-1A profile building. It's a really big question right now. And I don't know if you're involved in some of these groups, if you have, I don't know, tracking cookies on your computer, or if you are involved in lists that express some interest, you're probably receiving a lot of marketing materials from a lot of different players, companies, entities, agencies, and so on and so forth. I have somehow gotten signed up for so many of these things, so I actually do see a lot of them coming through, and then my clients will forward me items that they've received as well. So these can be emails, they can be social media outreach, invitations to events, like all different kinds of things. And it seems like there's a really, I don't know, busy industry now around EB-1A, where a lot of people really want to get involved, and a lot of people see that there's a lot of money in helping EB-1A profile builders. I really, really caution you to not take everything at face value there. Whenever there's huge opportunity like this, or perceived huge opportunity, a lot of people come in and they start offering things that are not real and that are very scammy. I saw one email the other day, and it came from some PR agency that had pivoted into EB-101 profile building. And the claims they were making are outrageous, like saying something like they had helped 1,000 EB-1A profile building applicants to get approved, and that they would give 100% money back guarantee to anyone who didn't get approved. And like citing numbers and figures all over the place that just realistically cannot be true, based on how long they've been around and how well known they are and what they're offering. So anyone can say that they've helped 1,000 EB-1A applicants, right? There isn't any check on that. There's nothing that you can do to say, oh, I can disprove this figure, or oh, you should prove this figure. Anyone can say anything about this. So someone's making really grand claims, and then you go into their website, and then you go into the profiles and everything of the people who are running these organizations, and there just doesn't seem to be much to back that up, or not anything that you can rely on to trust those figures. You should not assume that they are true. So that's one thing. The misinformation out there is crazy. The other thing that came up in this email, though, is they were offering some kind of package rate, and they were guaranteeing that they would publish 3 articles in like Scopus indexed publications, and guaranteeing that you would get 100 citations on those articles, as well as getting media spots in these top media publications, and so on and so forth. Like, that is really, really crazy. I will say, of all the things that you can or cannot pay for, you cannot pay for citations. That is fraud. Like, that is considered fraud in academia. There's so many scandals about that right now. It's considered fraud by any person you ask on the street. Anyone would immediately agree that that is fraud. So don't do any of that. Really, do not purchase citations. That is so important. As far as the other things in the list that you can pay for, like, can you pay to have articles published in the Scopus Index journals? I'd be really cautious about that. I would not retain anyone who is guaranteeing publication with 100% money back guarantee. That seems like fraud, because who knows what they're doing to get those things published. You can pay, I think you can realistically pay an editor, or you can pay someone who has success in publishing in journals for advice or for coaching, or to like review and edit your work. I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. But the work has to be yours. It has to be your original work. You do have to author it. You can't just hand it over for a ghostwriter or solely rely on ChatGPT or anything like that. So be very careful when people are offering guarantees of publishing. That's also very dangerous. And I think if USCIS asked if you did pay for that and what the circumstances were, and if there was a money back guarantee, they would be likely to call that fraud, even if it's more of a gray area than outright paying for citations. And then there's paying for media spots. The main thing with paying for media is, a lot of people pay for media. It's not outright fraud, but it is shady, right? And if you are being shady about the shadiness of it, that's when you get in trouble. So the marketing agency that put out this email, on their website, they were talking about how you needed to make your media look like it wasn't paid for when it was paid for. That is fraud. Like, you can't hide it. You don't have to state up front, I paid for this media, but you also can't be shady and hide the fact that it's paid for. USCIS can find out. And again, they can ask you direct questions. What will you say if they ask you how much you paid for this media piece, or how much you paid in total for profile building? You have to be able to answer those questions in order for you to be assured that there's not going to be anything wrong with your petition. So be very careful. You want organic media as much as possible. So using a lot of the free resources that are out there, actually interfacing and talking with reporters, whether it's responding to their prompts or doing outreach on LinkedIn or things like that, that's good. That's what results in what's called organic media coverage. But you can't say that something is organic media coverage when it's not organic media coverage. And that's what a lot of these agencies are doing. They're using organic as a buzzword, and they're saying, oh, we do organic coverage. And it's just not. Like, it's literally the opposite of what they're saying it is. So don't get caught up with the buzzwords there. It's not good to hide things from USCIS and do things in a shady way. It will get you in trouble in the future, or at least has a high likelihood of getting you in trouble in the future. All right. And then as far as paying for other things, paying for memberships, for example, you want to make sure that the fee arrangement for any memberships that you're paying for is public. It is upfront. It is something that every member pays. It is clearly posted on the website, and there's no hiding. There's no shadiness about it. I do think that paying for fellowships is fine. It's a basic membership fee. You're supporting the organization and the mission of the organization. You're covering the admin costs of supporting the fellows and the networking events and everything that comes out of that fellowship. But everything needs to be really upfront and disclosed so that even USCIS can go in and look at what's going on. I have heard reports of some fellowship organizations charging additional fees that are not disclosed on the website, or asking for personal payments or personal kickbacks. That kind of thing is not permitted, and that's definitely a strong indicator of fraud. So it's fraud if you pay it, but it's also an indicator that the organization is engaged in some fraudulent activities, and that can come under investigation in the future. So just be very careful when it comes to organizations, when it comes to fellowships, memberships, even when it comes to judging and things like that. All the fees should be public so that everyone can look into it, so that there's public scrutiny on it. And if you get an indication that something is not public, that's when you say no to it. That's very important. I will also say this has come up a lot in other contexts. So I used to think that this just came up in the membership context, but this has also come up for me in a couple of judging contexts or a couple of awards contexts where someone is either offered a judging role or they're offered an award, but then there's not public information, there's private information that is circulated over emails or over social media where you're supposed to purchase a package to support your judge role or your award. And I do think that the payments go to the organization, but the fact that those are not public does give me a lot of pause, because a lot of shady stuff can happen if payment arrangements are not public. What I've seen happen is there are a couple organizations that are offering different tiers for different like marketing packages around your judge role. And that to me seems really shady and indicates that something fraudulent is going on. Like if you are being invited to judge a hackathon, for example, that invitation should be publicly available to anyone who asks for it. You should have an invitation and you should be able to provide that to anybody. Sure, maybe you pay the event fee that all the other event participants pay to participate as a judge. That would be fun because the event fee is public, everyone pays it. The reason for it existing is like fine. Obviously, the organization needs to cover its administrative expenses, so that seems fine. But if you are being asked to pay $200 extra for a special customized invitation, or $500 extra for a special customized invitation, and then like some feature in some press release for the event, that seems really shady. And that's where if USCIS catches wind of this, they can say this is clearly a pay-to-play scheme. You weren't invited on the basis of your expertise. You were invited because they thought you would pay more money to be a judge. So be very careful. I actually didn't know that stuff like this was going on until last month. So I am hearing about a lot of this stuff new. And it's been kind of discouraging, to be honest. All right, so that's what you can and cannot pay for. If you have questions or if you've seen other things and you want to talk about what you can and cannot pay for, please post in the chat. We have about 7 or 8 minutes here. We do need to wrap up a bit early today. Jason, I think there's a few questions in the chat. We can go ahead and take those.
Sure. Hello, what is the minimum publication reviews do you suggest to satisfy the EB-1A judging criteria?
So it depends on what you want to satisfy it for, right? If you just want it to be checked off the list for you, USCIS is supposed to just look at the plain language of this, so you can do 2 and you'll be fine. That doesn't mean I recommend just doing 2. It's not really sufficient for a strong EB-1A case, but the ultimate number is going to depend on your EB-1A case and your individual circumstances. So I don't recommend looking at this in terms of minimum or maximum or ideal amounts. You should be looking at this in context of the narrative of your profile. Like what will show that you are an expert in your field? What will show that you are recognized and that you're generating that acclaim in your field?
There's been news on shutting down H-1B. What precautions can one take to avoid job and status loss before this happens in the future?
I mean, they can't shut down H-1B. The H-1B program is authorized by Congress. It is a required program. It's not like the executive branch can just say no more H-1Bs. That's not a real risk. What is a risk is that the executive branch can determine, to some degree, I'm sure this will be challenged in court, they can determine who should get preference for those visas. And this is mostly when talking about the lottery process, but they could also potentially make some changes to specialty occupation and the definition of specialty occupation. And if they do that, they can kind of limit who's able to get extensions. So there are things they can do to change the program. And I would say just monitor the changes and have an idea, have a backup plan in your mind of what your life would look like if you have to leave the US. You don't need to take concrete steps or concrete actions, because if there are changes to the H-1B, you will have plenty of notice just because of the way the whole administrative process plays out.
Can one have O1 sponsorship from a second employer while working on H-1B with the primary employer?
No, you can only have one status at a time. So if you are on H-1B status, you cannot have O1 status at the same time. So you would need to do a concurrent H-1B with the second employer.
Is meeting 3 criteria out of 10 enough, or how many criteria we need to target for final merit?
So final merits is not tied to the criteria. You don't need to claim more than 3. Meeting 3 is plenty. For final merits, though, you need to show overall that you have risen to the top of your field and that you do enjoy sustained acclaim on a national or international level. So oftentimes in final merits, I'm not just rehashing the criteria, although sometimes I do if that's what's strong for the case. Oftentimes on final merits, I'm really emphasizing the expert testimony, the level of experts that you're able to get to endorse you, the overall impact that your leadership or your technical innovations have had on your field, and summarizing everything very neatly for USCIS so that they can see that you are at the top of your field. But yeah, it's not about meeting criteria. 3 is plenty, as long as you meet all 3 of them very strongly.
Don't see any other questions. We
All
can
right.
talk about like we talk about like awards and why it's not really a criterion. It's like the go-to.
Yeah, I did have a consultation with someone this week where I recommended awards, but that's very unusual. It's so rare that I recommend that someone go for the awards criterion. In the present case, my client had already been nominated for a really prestigious award, and he didn't win it this time, but he would have had opportunity to be nominated again this year. And so that would be a really great opportunity if he actually wins. And then in his particular field, I know that there are a lot of really prestigious awards. It's more of an awards or merit or achievement based, I don't know, professional vibe in the field. There's a lot more out there that is recognized, and industry professionals in that field would think that the awards have meaning because they do have meaning in that field. For most of my clients, they're working in tech, engineers, quality control analysts, even scientist positions, bioinformatics scientists, and so on and so forth. Awards are not really a thing. Like there are a lot of awards organizations, and you can get an award for this or that. But realistically, when you're going in for job interviews, they're not asking about your awards and your accolades, and these things don't really seem to matter all that much. So I'm like, it just doesn't make sense for most people to go to it. The awards that do exist often tend to be paid where, the organization wants the awardees to pay for that designation. And that doesn't always diminish the competitiveness. The awards are genuinely competitive. So it's not fraud, again, as long as all of that is publicly displayed and available to the general public. But it's also not prestigious. Like it doesn't have much meaning. So it's not of great value. And there are awards that are sketchy where, again, they try to get you to pay extra for extra things. And that's not okay for EB-1A.
Thanks, Ira. 2 questions. If the publication is charging fees as a part of their publication process and as a peer review process, does it bring more credibility as an industry person? Can this be used for final merits?
Yeah, good question. And actually, I didn't cover this earlier. Like, can you pay to get your papers published? The answer is you probably have to pay to get them published because I shouldn't say all, most academic journals charge a fee to publish with them. So, again, as long as it's public, as long as it's applied to everybody, and as long as it's not, clearly predatory where they're paying and accepting it based on the payment. So they do have a rigorous peer review process. That's good. That's definitely good. There are journals, though, that they want you to pay and then they publish just based on that payment. So they don't have a rigorous peer review process, or they push everything along in that peer review process. Generally, those journals are on lists of predatory journals. Generally, they are really, really low ranked. Generally, they don't have great reputations. So there are indicators that you can look at to see if you should publish or not. But yeah, you can do this. You can pay, you can go through the rigorous peer review process. And as long as you're publishing in a decent journal, it is good for EB-1A.
So someone messaged me with a question. Can you claim high salary if you combine your H-1B salary and your concurrent H-1B salary?
Probably not, because it's not high annual income, it's high salary. So a single company would need to be recognizing your expertise and paying you accordingly. Like that's the whole purpose behind the high salary criteria. It's not how much you work, it's the value of the work that you're bringing.
All right, so 2 more questions. How would final merits work if you have lots of experience, 15 years, but did all media awards until recently? Yeah.
So you do need to get that acclaim somehow. So it doesn't necessarily need to be through awards, but you need other industry professionals to recognize that you are a top professional. So reference letters in that case will be really important, but you'll also probably need to pull in some third-party indicators of your reputation. So even if it's not through awards, like, are you getting invited to do public speaking? Are you getting invited to hold top positions on boards or committees? These are the kinds of things that I emphasize in final merits.
Notice you offer EB-1A consultation calls. Do these cover only an evaluation of current credentials, or do you also provide ongoing guidance for profile building?
So we often talk a little bit about profile building in the calls. I also have a separate profile building call type. It's a little bit longer and we can do more of a deep dive into your profile. If we've talked before on the initial consultation call and then you want ongoing profile building advice, you can always book a follow-up consultation. And then I have the notes saved and we can talk about, next steps and if you're on the right track.
All right.
All right.
That's all.
Thank you so much, everyone. I do have to end early here, so I can't get to all of the questions, but we will be live streaming next Wednesday. Feel free to join us then.
Thanks, Sarah.